Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Hilaal Live. Thanks for joining us on channel 347. Also on our live stream www.hilaal.tv. Today we're discussing the ICJ hearings and the various other countries that have taken Israel to court at the ICJ and letting the world know how they feel about what's exactly happening. We have opened the WhatsApp line 079-085-2511. You're more than welcome to send us a WhatsApp with regards to your opinion, your thoughts, and maybe your expertise around all the other countries that have come forward now, even after South Africa bravely put their best foot forward. In studio, Fay Nagia, who is an advocate, chatting to us about the current situation after the 10 other countries took Israel to the ICJ. Faye, thanks once again for coming into studio. Always lovely hearing your opinion and also getting an update on what's exactly happening. It's been a couple of interesting weeks, to say the least. And I think with South Africa leading the way, I would imagine that there could be issues around the, let's look at the charter. Right. Let's look at what does this mean for not just South Africa, the 10 countries, but everyone that's been affected by this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Look, I think that there are, and I want to touch on a very specific article in the United Nations Charter.
Okay.
But before I get there, I just want to talk about, some of the submissions that were made and how that's going to lay a scaffolding for further debates around this two-state solution that is constantly making its way in public debates and in public fora. Now, just historically, we know that this two-state solution was discussed very early on. It was discussed probably in the 70s, in the 80s, and if you look at the maps, and one thing I love about activism today is that we draw the maps and we track the maps to see how the Palestinian parts of the land, which the whole land is Palestinian, by the way, but according to international law, how this land had been swallowed up by this belligerent occupier called Israel. So at this point, we'll see very tiny little enclaves that have been allocated. I mean, we just look at Gaza, 2.3 million people, and we see other very disjointed areas like the Bantustans. I mean, for South Africa to say we agree with a two-state solution, we should know historically that that was something that our country had been faced with. And our ANC government of the day said, no, we do not want that kind of two-state solutions, because what it means is disjointed areas reliant on overall administrative power and authority by the minority regime. In this case, it would be Israel. So I don't understand why we are still even mentioning a two-state solution. What I like about the African Union representation in this particular leg before the ICJ is that they look at belligerent occupation and they mention that it's an occupier over territories that it does not have sovereign title over. That's very important.
Absolutely.
Why are you giving sovereign rights to a belligerent occupier to have an equal negotiating power around a table which deals with a sovereign nation of Palestine? So there are so many questions that really need to be asked around that.
And I think those are very important issues that need to be discussed. But right now, we all know the rebuilding needs to happen. But it can't happen without a ceasefire, without some form of assurance that there won't be any bombing, any attacks, any victimization. And I'm talking about not just rebuilding the country, but rebuilding the spirit of the Palestinians. And I think that's more important.
We're talking about outcomes here. We're talking about outcomes, and what we need to look at is what's going to get us to that particular outcome. Is this advisory opinion going to get us to that outcome? And the answer is not necessarily now, because this lays a foundation for further actions and further requests before the ICJ. It could take years before we get to a point of even looking at rebuilding. I think at this point, one really needs to consider Article 51 of the United Nations Charter.
Okay,
And it reads that nothing in the present Charter, which means no provision that we may bring cases before the ICJ, it does not preclude the inherent right of individual or collective self-defense if an armed attack occurs against a member of the United Nations until the Security Council has taken measures necessary to maintain international peace and security. It says measures taken by members in the exercise of this right of self-defense shall be immediately reported to the Security Council, so which means that you can invoke Article 51. Right now, we see ceasefires being put to vote before the Security Council. We see it being flouted and vetoed. Something like collective self-defense for the Palestinian people is what we need now. And I think more people need to start talking about it, and more countries need to start bringing that to the fore. So imagine if we had all of these countries now seeking an advisory opinion, invoking Article 51.
So, invoking Article 51, I mean, how and where is this done? Because we've now seen 10, 11 countries gone to the ICJ and still nothing has happened. So who now enforces this?
So there is obviously a process which Article 51 is invoked, although we see that we do not require, from the reading of this article, that you require Security Council approval beforehand.
Okay.
It needs to be reported once it's done. And then we also see that at any time such action, so it allows, under the present charter, to take at any time such action as it deems necessary in order to maintain or restore international peace and security.
Okay.
So even though that the Security Council will ultimately take the responsibility for that, those countries can catalyze that particular uptake of that responsibility by invoking Article 51. We see that every aspect concerning international law has been violated by Israel.
Yeah.
We see people crying out for help in Palestine. I do not see that there should be any reason not to invoke Article 51 at this stage, because everything else we are doing thus far is going to take an immense amount of time. And by that time, we could have seen a total extinction of the Palestinian people before a decision is even reached.
We've opened up the WhatsApp line, 07908525511. If you'd like to correspond, let us know. Let us know your thoughts about this very important topic. In studio, Fay Nagia, who is an advocate, and chatting about the outcomes of this very important and history-making as well. Fay, let's look at a different perspective. Israel seems to have quite a few allies. Israel seems to have people that have sided with them no matter what they've done. The rest of the world sees the devastation. The rest of the world sees the the terrorism that's happening, if you want to call it, right? Not my words. This is words of articles that I've read. I'm just quoting that. What's your thoughts in terms of an ally's perspective with regards to Israel?
If you look at what the UK, the USA is currently presenting before the ICJ, it's very similar to every single presentation or representation made by these countries at every opportunity before the ICJ or any other forum. So we see that they are talking about a negotiated two-state solution. They are talking about vigilance must be had in respect of the assumed unlawful conduct, in inverted commas. So we can see there's this outright denial of what we see happening in Palestine. And I don't know how much longer they believe that they can keep up with the charade, because people aren't fleeced. The people are aware of the truth. They are aware of what's happening on the ground. And we can see from the other representations by the countries, which are factual, which argue law and fact. And I don't know what the allied countries are basing their representations on. It's certainly not fact, and it's certainly not in law.
Fay, it's been an absolute pleasure having you in studio. Thank you so much for your perspective and also shedding light on a very important topic. We'd like to keep an updated or keep our viewers updated, and like to invite you back, and maybe with a panel of your colleagues, and just get a different perspective, but also in layman's terms what this means for us in South Africa and to the rest of the world, because the world's so small these days. We jump in a plane and we on the halfway across the world. So we all have family and friends living across the world as well. So we just need to keep them abreast of what is happening. Thanks very much. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you. Same to you.
My absolute pleasure. That's Fay Nagia in studio, advocate, chatting to us about the ICJ. 10 other countries, 11 in total, have now taken their case towards to the ICJ with regards to Israel's illegal occupation. After the break, we catch up with Islamic Relief. Inshallah, do join us on the WhatsApp line. Will be open still, 079 085 2511. You are still watching Hilaal Live.